Hi all! With the increase of Butcher Circus content on my channel, it was inevitable that I would talk about the campaign of Darkest Dungeons sometime here too. Something that quite bothered me when going through the campaign was the lack of videos that people made on the journal pages that can be found throughout the game, more so on the characters in these pages. This video is my personal spin on who the people in these journal entries are. Granted, they aren't meant to be one-to-one copies of the canon characters that we have in lore, but there aren't any laws saying that there can't be different variants of a base character that have different names. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. I'll be reading the journal pages from the base game journals, which consists of a trampled journal, blood-soaked pages from a torn journal, Journal of Darius the Highwayman, and Blackest of Fates. A trampled journal. Sebastian's watch was his last. We were jolted during our evening's repast, the best we could make in these murky halls of our once great house. From the roar and flash of black powder, we dropped our bowls and hurried to him. All we could find was his spent pistol and a trail of blood leading into a maze of shadows. We press on. We fought in the East Gallery, filled with portraits of our ancient lineage, uncaring witness to the slaughter. Alarazed, the fiery heartbeat of our retinue, wrought keen havoc in our enemies' ranks. I keenly feel his absence, even as I remember avoiding myself upon seeing his lifeless body fall. Blood pouring from his screaming mouth, some cruel knife having rent his lungs to gore. Yet we were victorious, and thus we pressed on. Hewell, dear friend, exemplary warrior, a survivor of the King's Wars, and many sorties in these halls, met an ignoble end. We were weary, Hewell and I, as we searched for sanctuary. Weariness, it appears, has a murderous streak. It blinded him to the mechanism that tripped the spikes, which eviscerated him. I held him as his essence slipped away, another giant fallen in our mad pursuit. I am alone now, weary but unbowed. I must press on. I am become vengeance. All cultists will fill my mace. Brigands fear my roar. I am outnumbered. 'Tis is true, I am starved and half mad, but as long as there's breath in my body, I will press on. I will wreak unbearable agony on those who would seek to despoil my great manes. And now they come, I douse my torch. I do not fear the darkness. This is my house, and woe to the uninvited. So, in this journal we have 4 established characters: Sebastian, Hewell, Alarazed, and an unnamed protagonist scouring these ruins. I'm inclined to believe that Sebastian is a highwayman, due to him being one of the early male classes that wields a flintlock pistol. Alarazed is another easy one. He is the canon name for the current occultist. It's not hard to put 2 and 2 together there. Hewell is a more trickier one to pinpoint though, as there isn't really any extra accessories or items that give away what class Hewell is in the journal. However, I'm going to go on a limb and say Crusader. More so the fact that he was a warrior in the King's Wars, which fits the bill for a Crusader being on the front lines. It's also funny because the Crusader lacks a decent trap disarm chance, which fits the story too, given how he died. The unnamed protagonist has a little more description in the journal that helps me identify who he was. I believe him to be a man-at-arms, simply due to the fact that he is the only class that uses the move Bellow, which can be seen in the journal that he shouts and roars, and he also has a mace that is utilized in combat as well, also seen in the journal where he uses a mace. The only conflicting thing that I see about the protagonist being the man-at-arms is that he is religious in the fact that he wanted to protect his manes, which in layman's terms is a place of, quote, a house provided for a minister of certain Christian churches, unquote. I can put this down to him being driven to the brink of insanity and having religious delusions. However, another fun twist that I could think of that this protagonist would be the fanatic. As unlikely as it might be, he wields more so a hammer than a mace, and he isn't much caring for being in a party. One could come to the conclusion that the fanatic was once a part of an adventuring group, had the group perish and got driven mad and skulks around the darkness in a religious tirade. However, that's just a funny theory. I really think that this is a man-at-arms. Blood-soaked pages torn from a journal. These dark caves drip with an overabundance of humidity, beyond my threshold of comfort. I nearly broke my ankle on the rocks, made slick with some ubiquitous slime. The pool store in slosh with no visible cause, and the shadows beyond torchlight seemed to grow and shrink on their own accord. My fears are confirmed. With our torch doused by an errant spray of seawater, we were ambushed. Strange fish-like hominoids ambushed us in the sudden darkness. The pitch of the torch caught quickly, and I glimpsed scaly appendages swinging crude weapons, glistening and barbed. They didn't last long with our torch rekindled. Alas, one bit me on the neck before I gutted it. The wound stings and tingles strangely. Our physic told me to keep it clean and covered. The wound is starting to fester. The flesh around it is grey, flaking and rigid, almost scale-like. As I write this, my breathing has taken on a hollow timbre and is more laboured. My compatriots are laughing, and tell me not to worry. It's just a salt mist in the air that pervades these caverns. They are sleeping. I am kept from slumber by a distinct stream of whispers, as if carried by the currents and waves of the sea. I have not told them that the most of my flesh is sawed off, revealing a strange, slivery membrane. I keep myself covered. They questioned me when I ate the meat raw at campfall, and found my response difficult to understand. I suppose it would be best to explain my condition when they awaken, then they will be convinced of my urgency to leave and find aid in the hamlet. The others are gone. They were victims of a malevolent transformation. Their scales had rotted to soft, vulnerable flesh, slowly suffocating their gills. The worst was their eyes, close-set and forced to squint through fleshy slits. I shudder recalling the horrific and unclean warmth of their blade as I rinsed my talons. I nearly retched. May death grant them soft mercy. I cannot recall why we ventured into land. Why did we leave when Mother Ocean provided all the needed beneath her tender waves? I will now return home, back to her embrace. Indecipherable scratchings filled the remainder of the page. So, this journal is about a group of unfortunate adventurers scouring the cove and met their demise by becoming fisherfolk themselves, which is a really interesting concept that I'm a little disappointed wasn't further explored in the game, not accounting for the siren. They were in a battle against the fisherfolk and a snail explained by the brine which took out the torchlight. It's really difficult to tell anyone in this team, except for a plague doctor, by the singular use of the word physic, which is often used when describing medicinal herbs as the like, which, a plague doctor carries alongside her. I can take a guess at what the main protagonist of the journal is, either being a highwayman or an abomination, with each for their own reasons. A highwayman, due to the fact that gutting a fish requires a knife, which he has, and the ease of access of hiding the fisherfolk transformation using a coat, scarf, and the alike. Unsure of the talons part, but one can assume claws outgo his gloves that he wore. The abomination is a lesser, but still valid option. A cloak to shroud himself throughout the story, and natural claws from transforming into beast mode are there, but I don't think the abominant is literate, nor would I think that it would be possible to have the curse of the beast and the fisherfolk cursed at the same time. An occultist is also possible due to sacrificial stab being a move, but I ultimately digress and I still think the highwayman is the overall best candidate. Everyone else is kind of just unknown, and I don't know how I feel about that. Journal of Darius, Highwayman. Day 1. Rare are travellers on the roads this autumn, and rather than starve, I pressed my last coin into the hand of the one who dealt in rumours and shadows. Ravens carried cryptic notes that there was a person or persons who was pledging for coin for services best left unmentioned in the hamlet I had never heard of. I am packing to leave immediately. Day 4. The road to this damned hamlet was a tricky one, both to find and to travel. When it revealed its ruined face, I swore I had never seen such neglect. Some buildings collapsed, and uncaring residents fidgeting uselessly. I went swiftly to the tavern. Others with similar interests had gathered there, and I was assembled onto an expedition. We leave at first light on the morrow. Day 6. As we travelled from the hamlet, an eerie dread grew. We all felt it, but did our best to shrug it off. Sleep was difficult until Raven, one of my companions, passed me a bitter concoction. The most devout of us, Therion, prayed for our safety, superstitious but well-intentioned, I suppose. I am already falling asleep. Day 7. We tangled with some unruly louts. Raven called them cultists. They were ferocious, but clumsy. Day 8. Moira has been afflicted with sickness. It must have been some rotting air from a coffin she insisted on piercing with her spade. As terrible as this place is, I know I'll not fall for any trap nor crazed idiot. I wager my lucky coin on it. My end. I scroll this, victim of cruel fortune, who took me up on my wager, for I have lost my lucky coin, and I now lie helpless as my blood flows swiftly from my ruined body. My fingers are cold. It was no trap, nor raving cultists that sealed my fate. We were ambushed by strange, undulating shapes, two small entities that I cannot hope to describe, and a third, much larger beast. Poor Moira was crushed into a pulp as Therion defended her. He soon lost his arm and his wits left him. Shambler! Shambler! He kept shrieking as Raven yanked him to flee. I tried to play hero, buy them a few moments, blew one away of the smaller monsters. Last shot, then smashed into the wall. The big one. Maybe they made it out. Okay, I don't know about you guys, but I think that Darius might be a highwayman. Jokes aside, this journal is about the journal of Darius making it to the hamlet and eventually going through the Weld to see his party crumble to a shambler encounter. Or at least half the party dying to the shambler. I think it's safe to say that Moira is a grave robber by the fact that she tried to rob a grave. Simple, but it fits the bill for her personality. An antiquarian might also be an option, but I doubt she'll be willing to use a shovel to go grave robbing. Therion, I believe, is a man-at-arms, due to the fact that he tried to defend Moira, which man-at-arms can do with a shield, or the move defender. However, we come across the problem of a religious man-at-arms once again, which can be seen as a discrepancy like before, he isn't religious. Another option that could be a possibility would be Therion being a leper, due to the fact that Withstand can be used as a protective damage redirect, but ultimately failed and lost his arm in the process. Lepers are also religious, so that fits the bill a bit. I can see it, but usually a leper doesn't lose his wits, in canon at least, and is usually willing to be a martyr of sorts for death. More so than the fact that he's accepting it instead of, shying away from it. However, I'm personally going to go with Therion being a man-at-arms. Raven, I believe, can either be a plague doctor or an antiquarian. They both have vapors and concoctions of sorts that buff the party, however antiquarian has a concoction that was described as bitter, which means that it's ingested. Plague Doctor has only vapors, which would be snorted through the nose and not ingested. So I had to scrounge around through some camping skills. Antiquarian's Strange Powders camping skill makes sense to me since you can theoretically make that into a concoction that could be given to Darius. At least that makes sense to me, though I'd like to see some discussion on this as it's very open to interpretation. The Blackest of Fates. Our purpose was to desecrate the animalistic shrines and thus disperse the swinefolk. But soon as we came across an artifact, this was far beyond the crude fetishes crafted by the pigmen. It looked as if obsidian had been grown and twisted into a dark symbol of worship. It cradled a pulsing red orb glowing with malevolent light. Cuthbert, Bolin, and I hesitated, but thrice-damned Mizir, driven by crazed impulse, thrust his torch in a hidden receptacle and thus sealed our fate. In that same instant, we found ourselves in a place of suffocating dark, facing a creature that defies description and whose recollection causes my quill to jump and shudder. It is merciful only fragments of our battle remain in my psyche. I see Cuthbert hacking at the quiver appendages of the monster. I recall how a piece of its flesh sloughed off on its own twisted accord, sprang into baleen, piercing a stout plate. The occultist, as if offering himself as tribute, was torn apart by its writhing limbs. The assault was overwhelming. With Cuthbert slain and as Boylan fell, I was driven by rage. I leapt and drove my axe into the creature's many eyes. Purple ichor splashed my face and my very soul shook as it bellowed. The only thing I can recall after was falling swiftly into blackness. I now find myself back in the Warrens, among the remains of my companions. My wounds are too severe to allow the completion of my task. Thus the desecration must resume another time. Curious, there is a ring in my pocket. Where it came from, I cannot begin to guess, though it bears the sigil of the estate's ancestral owner. Very, Curious. I will return with Cuthbert's banner and Boylene's crossbow so as to honour them with a proper burial. I will leave what is left of the thrice-damned Mazir and his trinkets to the swinefolk. Perhaps they'll build him the memorial he rightly deserves. This story takes place of a group of 4 people going through the Warrens. Ugh, champion level Warrens, I'm good, thanks. And they encountered a Shambler altar, interacting with it and successfully slaying it. At what cost? A damn fine team perishing. Cuthbert is a crusader, from the fact that is the only character to wield a banner, and Boylan has a crossbow, which means she is an arbalist. She also has a quote-unquote stout plate, which we can see the arbalist wears. Mazir is outright stated to be an occultist in the journal itself, to which he also wasn't very helpful to fight as he was offering himself to the Shambler. Perhaps was this the same Shambler he struck a deal with? I'm sure that the main character of this journal is a bounty hunter. The only class that properly wields an axe. The Hellion wields a halberd of sorts and isn't literate. To me, this is just less speculation and an easy one to cover. But overall, that was just the base journals covered and my thoughts on who was what. A small little fun set of theories on the unsung heroes of the Darkest Dungeon lore. So, thanks for watching.